Everyone in Ojuka village knew the Iroko tree by the river, but no one spoke about it after sunset. In the daytime, it looked ordinary, tall and wide, its roots pushing through the red earth like the knuckles of an old man's hand. Children passed it on their way to school, women washed clothes nearby, and fishermen tied their canoes to its thick roots. Yet when night came, the tree earned its name. It cried. Amina first heard the sound the night her mother fell ill. The power had gone out, as it often did, and the village was wrapped in a heavy darkness broken only by kerosene lamps. Amina lay on a mat beside her mother, listening to her uneven breathing, when a low, trembling sound drifted through the open window. It was not loud, but it carried weight, like grief trying not to be heard. At first, Amina thought it was the wind. But the air was still. Then she thought it was a person, maybe a woman crying by the river. The sound rose and fell slowly, steady and deep, and something about it made her chest feel tight. "Auntie Zainab," she whispered to her older sister, who was half asleep. "Do you hear that?" Zainab stiffened. "Don't talk," she said softly. "Cover your ears." That was when Amina knew it was the tree. Growing up, Amina had heard the stories. The elders said the tree cried for those who were about to lose something important. Some said it cried for the dead. Others believed it held the sorrow of the land itself, storing years of pain in its trunk until it could no longer remain silent. No one agreed, but everyone feared it. The next morning, Amina's mother died. The women of the village came with bowls of water and quiet words. The men dug the grave behind the house, their faces set and serious. Through it all, Amina could not stop thinking about the sound she had heard the night before. She wondered if the tree had cried for her mother, or if it cried because it already knew. After the burial, Amina avoided the river path. Even in the daytime, the Iroko tree unsettled her. Its bark was dark and rough, scarred by time. Sometimes she thought she saw lines on it, thin and shiny, like dried tears. She told herself it was just sap. Life moved on, as it always did. Amina returned to school. Zainab began helping more at home. Their father grew quieter, older. Still, every few weeks, the tree cried again. Each time, something followed. A farmer lost his only son in a road accident. A woman's house burned down in the middle of the night. A newborn died before naming day. People began counting. Some villagers started leaving small offerings at the base of the tree. Others refused to go near it at all. The pastor preached against superstition, saying fear gave power to things that did not deserve it. The traditional priest warned that disturbing the tree would bring worse trouble. Arguments broke out. The tree stood unmoved, its leaves whispering nothing. One evening, Amina overheard a conversation that changed everything. "The tree must be cut down," a man said. "It brings bad luck. And if cutting it brings worse." Another replied, "What if it is crying because it is holding something back?" Amina's heart pounded. That night, she could not sleep. The memory of her mother's face, calm in death, floated in her mind. Before she could stop herself, she rose, wrapped a shawl around her shoulders, and stepped into the night. The moon was thin but bright enough to light the path. Crickets sang, unaware of human fear. As Amina approached the river, the air grew cooler. The tree loomed ahead, darker than the darkness around it. Then she heard it. The crying was louder this time, clearer. It sounded almost human, broken and tired. Amina's legs shook, but she kept walking until she stood before the tree. Up close, she saw the source of the sound. A long crack ran down the trunk, and from it flowed a clear liquid, dripping steadily to the ground. Tears. Amina reached out and touched the bark. It was cold and damp. In that moment, images flooded her mind. Faces she recognized and faces she did not. Pain, loss, hunger, war, abandonment. The sorrow of generations pressed against her heart, so heavy she sank to her knees. She understood then. The tree was not causing the tragedies. It was mourning them. For years, people had brought their grief to the river. They cried there, prayed there, buried secrets in the soil. The Iroko had stood and absorbed it all. It carried what humans could not. When the weight became too much, it cried. Amina wept with it until the sound faded and the night grew quiet. The next day, she told the elders what she had seen. Some did not believe her. Others felt a strange relief. The decision to cut the tree was abandoned. Instead, the village cleaned the riverbank and treated the place with respect. People still feared the crying, but they listened now. Over time, the tree cried less. Amina grew older, left the village, and returned years later as a teacher. The Iroko still stood by the river, tall and silent. One afternoon, she took her students there and told them its story. Some things cry not because they are evil, she said, resting her hand on the bark, but because they have listened for too long. The tree did not cry that day. But the leaves stirred softly, as if in understanding. Years passed, and the story of the crying tree slowly changed shape, the way all village stories do. What once sounded like a warning began to sound like a lesson. Children no longer ran past the river in fear. Instead, they paused, curious, searching the bark for the lines Amina had described. Some claimed they could still see them when the sun hit the trunk at a certain angle. Amina stayed longer this time. Teaching in Ojuka felt different from teaching in the city. Here, every lesson carried weight. History was not just in books but in faces, in land, in silence. After school each day, she often walked to the river, sitting beneath the Iroko tree with a notebook on her lap. She wrote stories, not just her own, but those people trusted her with. Stories of loss, endurance, and quiet courage. One afternoon, an old man named Baba Sule joined her. He leaned heavily on his walking stick and stared at the tree for a long time before speaking. "You know," he said, "when I was a boy, this tree did not cry." Amina looked up. What changed? "People stopped listening to one another," he replied simply. "We learned to carry our pain alone." His words stayed with her. That year, the rains came late. The river shrank, and farms began to suffer. Worry crept back into the village like a familiar shadow. One night, as thunder rolled in the distance, the crying returned. It was softer than before, but unmistakable. This time, no one panicked. Instead, lanterns appeared along the riverbank. People came quietly, standing together beneath the tree. Some prayed. Some held hands. Others simply listened. No tragedy followed the next day. No sudden death. No fire. The rain came instead, steady and generous, soaking the dry land. From then on, the villagers began to treat the tree not as a curse, but as a reminder. When conflicts arose, elders gathered people to talk things through before bitterness took root. When someone suffered loss, they were not left alone. Grief was shared, spoken aloud, released. The tree cried only once more while Amina was there. It happened the night Baba Sule passed away peacefully in his sleep. The sound was brief, almost gentle, like a farewell. At dawn, Amina walked to the river and placed her palm against the trunk. The bark felt warm, alive. She realized then that the tree had never needed offerings or fear. It needed understanding. When Amina finally returned to the city, the crying tree remained behind, rooted and watchful. Travelers still heard stories about it, and some still trembled at the name. But in Oduka, people knew better. They knew that even the strongest things can carry too much for too long. And sometimes, the bravest thing they can do is cry.